Welcome everyone to Minding the Gap, podcast brought to you by Behavioral Sciences of Alabama. I'm Paul Bakke, licensed counselor with Dr. David Barnhart, and we're going to talk about our minds and the stress that we all deal with every day and the gaps that those create and how we can use our minds to strategize. How you doing today, Dr. Barnhart? Good to see you.
Thank you, Paul. It's good. It's good to be here. And there's a lot of stress floating around, it seems.
Lots of stress. The pandemic, we've got an election coming up, we've got protests, we've got all kinds of, that's enough. Okay, that's enough.
Yeah,
and then and surrounding that, we've got kids that are going to school from home. We got people getting sick still. We got the president getting sick. People having opinions about that. It's you can't make it up, right? You can't make it up.
You cannot make it up.
So the last time we talked about parenting and dealing with did we talk about that? We talked about that.
We did, yes.
But we talked about redirecting our thoughts, relabeling them, using some creativity to be able to do that, and to be able to subscribe to thoughts that help us feel better and meet the go far test, meet our goals, help us get along with other people, feel like we want, keep us alive, and that are based in reality. So we talked about that. And so today I wanted to kind of backtrack a little bit, whether it's getting ready for the stress of the day of having to deal with your student who doesn't want to attend the Zoom meeting and hates the computer online system, or whether it's dealing with whatever the pandemic issues are creating for us today. How can we structure our days so that we'll be more prepared for that? Because if we sleep better, if we feel better, if we take care of ourselves, we have more ability to inoculate against stress, as you say. Yes. So why don't you talk a little bit about that concept, structuring of our day?
So it really goes to how much our brains are activated by the environment that we find ourselves in. And I think we don't have quite enough appreciation for how powerful that is. Most of the time, we don't have to think about what we're going to do. If I walk out of this room, for example, I don't have to think about the steps I'm taking. I don't have to think about opening the door. But likewise, if I go to make lunch, if I decide, well, I'm going to make a grilled cheese sandwich, I don't really have to think about what the steps are. They're kind of wired in, and I just go through the process, and I'm conscious of other things that I'm doing. Likewise, if we lack structure, then we don't get the cues that actually help us work through the day. And that sounds okay, for vacation. I mean, for some certain length of vacation, but, we might go say, well, I'm just going to, I'm going to live in the moment, and which is a good thing to do. And I'm going to just do whatever comes up. Well, that's fine. It's a good break. But when you're trying to monitor your child who's doing Zoom school, and on some days, and then going to brick and mortar school on other days, which is, by the way, you're probably running into this with some of the clients you're seeing, is confusing. It's challenging for kids to keep up with particularly different teachers who are maybe doing different things, even though theoretically they're supposed to maybe put their information on the same website for people to be able to get to. It's challenging to keep up with. So some days you're in school, and some days you're on Zoom, and you have assignments to carry out on your own, and then sometimes you have in-class meetings. Very, very confusing for kids. And so we need to help them structure their day. So if you got kids, you help them structure. But if you're by yourself, you also need some structure. One of the things that we know that's wired in that can be very helpful that we tend to be goal directed. So if we have some goals that we're going to try to strive for, even if it's I'm going to walk around the block for 10 minutes, it's good to put that in and put it into a structure, even a schedule, to write it out. So you bring some structure into the day. And part of that structure would need to be self-care. Um, so exercise, certainly, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit. We often encourage people to do meditation. Meditation is in cognitive behavior therapy is considered the third wave of cognitive behavior therapy. So the first wave was behavioral interventions, and then the cognitive part, we began to recognize that people actually think.
Amazing.
It is. And
I mean, who would
so
have thought? I mean, when did they even figure that out?
I don't know. I think they were protesting in front of B.F. Skinner's house or something, and he finally caved and said, "Okay, well there are mental things that go on." But at any rate, so what we've learned, of course, is that there's a lot going on, and that we can actually use our thinking to help us construct our behavior so it goes in the direction we want. Um, but the meditation part has to do a lot with the parasympathetic nervous system, that that calming, relaxed feeling that you get um, when you are able to kind of focus your attention on being in the moment. So, I think we think about the day and what we could put into it, and often it's repetitive, but we can also break it up. And sometimes we need to put ourselves in the position of doing something different, even if it's go to a separate place, a different place to walk outside, you know, expose ourselves to a little different environment. Have a mission to. I'm walking down. We'll just say a local bike path or a walking path. Um, and my job today is to come back with one interesting photograph, something, um, so that I'm setting some goals, I'm planning some steps, and I'm much more likely to feel like the day is meaningful, learning to reach out to other people. Something else we could talk about, some strategies for doing that. But self-care is a good place to go. So we start with ourselves. We set ourselves up for a better coping strategy. And at the same time, when we do that, we can, if we have other people we're responsible for, like children who are going to school, we do the same thing for them. And it's best if we kind of collaborate with the kids to get them to make input, and maybe some of the time breaking the day up, so that, like you need to have your day broken up some, they probably could use some of the same. You don't want to actually be sitting for 3 hours doing homework. Even at school, you get to move around a little bit.
Right. Yeah, and that's part of that is what you were talking about in the beginning with I call it autopilot. We just get
Mm-hmm.
on, we just do what we're used to doing, and sometimes that means doing the same thing that's not helpful over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes it's not meeting a new goal that's difficult for us because we're not in the habit of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're talking about is you're talking about becoming mindful of what's happening instead of just allowing your day to kind of prioritize for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're deciding what your priorities are by writing them down. What are my goals? What do I have to do?
Mm-hmm.
Even the situation where you think I've got to accomplish this can
Mm-hmm.
become overwhelming if we look at the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
We can break it down into steps. So it's a little easier if I focus on small part at a time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the meditation is really kind of reinforcing that training of being aware of the moment and being able to just sort of and it's nice to be able to just sit a few minutes
Mm-hmm. Breathe.
and breathe,
Mm-hmm.
just and have nothing to do but do that. So let's talk a little bit about mindfulness and meditation. One of the things that we encourage clients to do quite a bit, and I do, and I learned this a long time ago, is called, we call the back to one mindful meditation exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very simple. And when sometimes we think about meditation, we think of getting in touch with our spiritual sense, and we're kind of moving out into another universe, and it's not really that. It's just really about being mindful of the moment, aware without any judgment. That's a big part of it,
Mm-hmm.
because we're constantly, we've talked about this before, we're assessing, what does this mean? What's this, is this good or bad?
Mm-hmm.
How can we make sense of this? And in mindfulness, we're just experiencing it and observing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the back to one exercise would be just simply counting and breathing up to 10, counting each breath. When you get to 10, you go back to 0. I do this a lot, and I still go to 10, 11. I still go too high. But the idea is, if you
I
get
do
off,
that. Yes.
you get distracted, hear a noise, whatever it is, you just go back to 1. Don't get mad at yourself. You didn't do it wrong. You're not an idiot, anything like that. You're just observing that you're off. You're just mindful of being off and mindful of being back on it, and doing that for 2 to 5 minutes.
Yes.
And one thing that we talked about last week, we talked about relabeling, identifying, aware of, oh, this is an unhelpful thought. I'm aware
Mm-hmm.
of that. I've called it a name.
Mm-hmm.
That's a jabroni thought, in the case of my example from last week. And I'm going to move it over to a helpful one. I'm going to move, and that's what you're doing in mindful meditation, is you're moving your mind where you want it to go to. We call it the valued activity,
Yes.
something that's valued in the moment, the counting and the breathing in this case. The distraction doesn't have value. We're not going to get upset about it. We're just going to move it back to the counting and the breathing. And that's what we do with our thinking. We catch it. Oh, no, I'm not going to pay attention to that. I'm going to pay attention to these more. I'm going to get off of that and get back onto these kinds of things. So that's the value of it, is we're doing brain training. We're actually doing
Yes,
brain
we are.
training.
Right. Yes. And, the evidence is clear that when we do that, basically it's the left prefrontal cortex that is involved. And with accumulation of time in meditation, we actually begin to create new neural pathways. The value of that seems to be that it makes it easier for us to buffer stress. So if you think about going through your day as you would a meditation, so you're going through an activity and you're focused on whatever it is you're doing, having a conversation with somebody, your attention goes over somewhere else. Maybe it's an unhelpful thought. Maybe you had an unhelpful thought about the person you're having a conversation with, and you recognize that, but the meditation benefit is that you can be aware of that without getting all caught up in it, without getting all engaged, or reacting. So people are complaining to me, as I know they're complaining to you recently, as they feel like they're snippy or edgy, when that's not their usual behavior.
Charming self.
They're not their usual charming selves.
Yeah.
I'm getting that complaint a lot. I'm edgy. I'm irritable. And so meditation is not a panacea. And it's not, it takes some some effort to get it integrated into our pattern. And it's like other things that, are good for us, like exercise or making good choices with our diet.
Or to get in the
Uh,
habit. It feels like I need to have that cookie right now.
exactly.
It
So,
doesn't feel like I want to exercise right now.
yeah.
This recliner really feels pretty good.
And those are normal things. People get upset. They'll say, well, I thought about meditating, but I didn't really get around to it. And my answer to that is, you thought about doing it. And I'm not being
To
sarcastic.
start.
And
To
and
start.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, I thought about it. I'm going, well,
Keep
good.
doing that.
Exactly.
If you don't
Because
think about it, it ain't gonna happen for sure.
that's right. Yes.
Yeah, it's a step. So, and that's, we talk about goal setting,
Hmm.
a lot. And and one of the things we have is the achievement motivation kind of thing that we talk about a lot.
Hmm.
What's the goal? What's the broad goal? What are the steps? How do you set it up? Small steps. And then a
Hmm.
big part of that is overcoming blocks,
Hmm.
because what are the blocks that are in the way of getting into a better routine?
Hmm.
What is it? Is it a feeling? Is it a thought? Is it just a habit that I keep doing? I just sort of do this. An example is what's the external blocks? What's outside of me that's getting in the way? With the exercise, mentioning that,
Hmm.
when I was actually doing this program, I was trying to increase my exercise during the week. The blocks were really big for me to be able to identify them. Hunger was one of them. If I got off work and I was hungry, then if I ate, it was over with. That was kind of an internal
You
block.
were no
So
longer hungry.
well, I was, sat down at the table. I wasn't moving anymore. I was right. I was.
Hmm.
So if I ate dinner, it was over for me. So it was like get a snack, just take a banana or an apple or something like that. Just
Hmm.
tide me over. Get workout as soon as I get home. And then
Let me
another one.
interrupt you. This is a really good example
Okay.
of what you're saying to yourself.
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's so much evidence about what you're saying is in your example here is the importance of self-talk. All right. Now I hope I didn't throw you off track. Keep
Okay.
going.
No.
So,
So all right. So as I'm looking at this, right. So I'm trying to identify. Okay. What's another external block? And it's right behind me. It's my recliner. If I sit in it, forget it. I am
mm,
not exercising. If I come
mhm.
home and I sit in that thing, it is over with.
Yes.
Not doing it.
Yes.
So here's my plan. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to go right by my recliner. I'm mindful of, if I sit in that thing and if I sit down and eat dinner,
Mhm.
not going to do it, right?
Mhm.
And the other thing was breaking it down into steps, like
Mhm.
20 minutes. I can do 20 minutes. I can do 10 minutes. Start with
Yeah.
10. Go. Don't wait. Boom. Go. And then I got in a habit, and now I'm in. It doesn't feel good if I don't. But in the beginning, it was
Mhm.
very much talking to myself, identifying the blocks,
Mhm.
what is getting in the way of this, and also, man, I forgot to do it today. That
Mhm.
part of the process is making a mistake and getting back into that
Mhm.
autopilot
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
doing what's comfortable in the moment. It's okay. That's part of the process, is learning, falling back a little bit.
Mhm.
And then the more you do something, the more it feels like, this is sort of autopilot. This
Right.
feels good to do this, to be mindful, to
Mhm.
structure my day, to have goals, to write things, whatever it is that we're trying to do. But it
That
but it's the overcoming the blocks, to me, that
Mhm.
really is essential in talking to ourselves and going, what can I do to
Mhm.
get past this? That's sometimes a very simple plan. With the hunger, it was
Mhm.
take a power bar.
Uh-huh.
That's it.
Yeah.
Banana. What recliner. Don't go there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Resist. It's going to pull you over there, but don't just keep going back by it. You can do it. And so being able to be mindful of those kinds of things is important.
Well, that's a really good example of structuring your day and the reason for structuring your day. So what you did specifically with exercise is structure your approach to exercise. So you set yourself up by making decisions about what you're going to do so that when you walked in, you saw the recliner, you already had recognized
Right.
that you were going to walk past the recliner. I'm thinking maybe you gave it a little pat as you walked by, but then
I
you,
didn't get close to it. I didn't get it. Yeah, because I can take a right and not even. I did not trust myself to go get
it would
close to
just
it.
pull you right in.
It would just
Pull you
eat
right
me.
in.
It would eat me alive.
Absolutely. Well, that's the power of the environment. So the part of our brain, the hippocampus, is about context. So you walk in, you have a memory of the context, and that's a cue then to behave in a certain pattern. Now, people in recovery know this for sure.
Oh yeah,
They're saying, "Oh, you got to change your playground."
that's right. You to change. Talked about that this morning.
Yeah.
With a client, you go in a different route home.
Yes.
Don't drinking buddies. Not going to associate with
Mhm.
them. Just changing the condition,
So
changing the conditions.
that's right. We have the ability to decide what we want to do. Uh, to be effective, it's important to recognize what it is we need, and then structure it in such a way that we're more likely to be successful with it. So you did a number of things there that really provide a good example of structure, and I particularly like the self-talk part. So when we recognize when we're being pulled off, I want to spend my time doing this and not that. What is it I need to say to myself? And we do this all the time in therapy. Uh, People withdrawing from drugs, for example. What do you say to yourself when you have this feeling, and what kinds of things can you do to increase the probability that you can make it through that withdrawal phase? There's a lot of learning how to set up our environment.
And
This,
using memory too, using memory of success. And
yeah.
when I resisted that, and when I
Hmm.
outlasted my urge, I felt so much better in the morning. It was it felt good. There was a reward in it, which is really the last part of the motivation and the goals thing that we talk about, is
Hmm.
identifying what the reward is. And if we've done it before and we've felt the success, we've experienced the success, that's there. It's in our memories, and we
Hmm.
need to
Hmm.
be mindful of that. This is why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because it
Hmm.
helps me. I'm doing this. It's really hard, and I really have an urge to do this thing or avoid this thing. But doing this, there's a reward in it, and if I can anticipate it, then
Hmm.
I'm even experiencing the reward as I'm thinking about it.
Yes, you are. That's right. And so that's part of reframing. Um, that helps influence our emotions. So not only are we aware of the trigger, but we also know how to think, and bringing in memory of successful experiences is one of the ways we can change that emotional response and increase the probability that we'll engage in the behavior change and have the outcome that we're looking for. Something else comes to mind as you were talking about exercise, because that's an interest that you have. You also are a musician,
Sort of.
and yeah, well, you're a musician, and I think part of what we want to recognize is that we have interests that are at a high level, and maybe it's thrown off. Maybe the restrictions that come with COVID uh, are inhibiting our um, pursuit of things that we would normally pursue, whatever that might be. So we find ourselves in this routine, and we're not going out. Like if we go to art lessons, we're not going to art lessons. If we're not going to
Church.
music, going to church. So think about really anything. So there's some evidence of this. And I don't want to say how strong it is, but one of the things that we know, when interests are a high level, like 90 percentile, like if my interest is at the upper 10%, that is probably going to operate much like a need:
Hmm.
food, water, shelter, clothing,
Yeah, and
love.
And that's a loss if we don't have it.
If we don't have it, we are not going to be our usual charming selves. And I'm finding that when I'm asking people, what are the hobbies that you were doing, or what were the things that you were pursuing that were of interest? They say, well, I haven't done that in a while. It's, ever since COVID. And I'm going, okay, well, let's think about how you would do that. Um, even from the standpoint of extroversion, I think if you have a lot of introversion, you're getting some of that need met. If you live by yourself, maybe you're overdosing on it. But it could be either extreme, can be normal. It's just a different way of being. But if you're extroversive, you are stimulated by interaction.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, what do? I got a note yesterday from a woman. I started to say young woman. I met her when she was 16. Okay. And I calculated she's probably close to 50. Okay. And when I picture her, I think of her as being 16.
She is a young woman. She is a young woman.
She's a lot younger than I am, but she sent me I got a note from her. And one of the things I remembered is her handwriting is worse than mine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I like her already.
She's great. She has a master of social work. And she was telling me that, she was in a class and they were talking about writing a note to somebody who'd mentored you. And so she thought of me and she wrote me a note, and I got it yesterday. And I'm trying to figure out what it says. And my wife is standing with me trying to figure out what the words are. But then we figured it out. And she told me this story, and it recalled for me what I've been saying to people. Look, write a note to somebody. I think I may have mentioned this before.
Some kind of way to connect.
Yeah, because if you do, it's special. It's a little special. It doesn't matter. It can be on a scrap piece of paper you stuff in an envelope, but she took the time to write a note. And the cool thing is that she wrote her phone number on it. And so today after work, I'm going to give her a call and touch base with her. But, and this is what I say to people: if you send somebody a note, hey, I'm just thinking about you, blah, 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 few little words, not particularly significant, except that they thought about you, and you're probably going to get a phone call. All right. So for people who are extroversive, think about, how do you get that need met?
Yeah.
I mean, this is, one way. And one of our colleagues, his family is scattered around the universe pretty much. But they'll have dinner together over at like a Zoom, not Zoom platform, but they'll be eating together and having conversation around the table, and somebody's in, on the West Coast and somebody's some other area.
We've done board games by Zoom.
Talk about it.
Yeah. Well, we just, I think we did categories, so we put up the category. Okay. Roll the dice. K. Send many letters, here's the words. Send a picture, and everybody's doing it, and everybody's talking and laughing. And so it's, you can't be together, especially, this is out of town people. So it's even, even when we get back from the pandemic, you can't see people that are, far away.
Right.
There's different ways to connect with people, and you get that interaction that just gives us energy.
Yes, it does.
Just gives us energy. And like you said, with someone that's extroverted that gets a high dose of energy from that, it's depressing for them. They can't, there's no outlet for it. To be able to have an outlet for things, that's what we talk about all the time. The things like when someone comes in as depressed or anxious and those things, we immediately talk about taking care of yourself, structure, meditate,
right?
Those kinds of things. Do something fun. Something fun. Yes. Have something to look forward to. And in this pandemic, when we can't really be together like we could before, we got to get creative.
Yes, we do. That's why God invented fire pits.
That's right. Oh yes, man. I love
So
the fire
you, so what do? You build a
pit.
fire. You've got one. So
Yeah.
you got a fire, and you've got seats because we've been to your house and we've sat around this fire pit, and it's socially distanced, right?
Right.
So you're outside, you're socially distanced, and you're able to get that contact, and it helps you then when you're going through the rest of the time. So if you tend towards some extroversion, then or if you're right in the middle, I mean, you're going to need a certain amount, or you're otherwise you're going to be under stress. So if you wonder why you're snippy, look at those things. Am I getting my needs met? If you're a gardener, I mean,
I'm,
I've seen
I'm a gardener
gardeners.
now. I'm a gardener now.
It turned you into a
I wasn't
gardener.
one. It's turned me into a gardener.
Yeah.
I've got a whole landscape that I
Yeah.
did.
Yes.
Been flipping over bricks in my back patio. I mean, I've become, this project, Mr. Fix It guy. That
It's very impressive.
was not that guy before I was at home with,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not going to sit around and watch TV. It's tempting, but I'm do something that's producing something, maybe
Yes.
it's a new interest, it's really kind of a new interest for me.
Mm-hmm.
It is possible to find new things to do in all this,
Mm-hmm.
but finding something recreational that we enjoy doing, that expresses
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, that gets an interchange in some kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And what you were talking about too was, the writing the note to someone. You think about
Mm-hmm.
what's happening as we're writing a note. We're experiencing them. We're thinking about them. We have memories of them.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying, I appreciate you. We're recognizing that this is a good part of our life, and that makes us feel good. That makes us feel
Exactly.
better.
Yeah.
And that's what this is really all about: is learning how to take all this stuff that's happening and help us to feel better, so that we can deal with things better that are tough. They're just tough right now.
Yes. Yes. You know, talked about meditation. One of the things that we can do is teach our kids to meditate. So while you're trying to learn how to meditate, um, there are resources for doing that, and you don't have to get a hernia meditating. As a matter of fact, I've really never met anybody that got a hernia meditating. I think it's not that strenuous. Um, but there are apps that we can go to. Um, we often refer people to the website, marc.ucla.edu. I'll repeat that, marc.ucla.edu. They've got free guided meditations, and they've got every week they've got a guided meditation where they specifically orient toward one subject. But with kids, it can be a minute, 30 seconds. Teach them to breathe. Always remember that when you're breathing, when you take breaths, and on the exhale particularly, that's parasympathetic nervous system. So the anxious part of us that's reacting, that's snippy, if we take the time to breathe, take a deep breath, exhale slowly. We do that some and practice it during the day. Every time you do that, you're really kicking in your parasympathetic nervous system. It's a good antidote to being anxious. I let me interrupt for a second because I cannot hear your audio. It just it kind of disappeared. So why don't we take it from the top next time? Okay, I can't hear you. So we'll sign off, and this will just be a funny thing. Take care.